On this episode of Let's Explore This, we are going to be covering the Main Street Historic District. It is located in Brevard, a small city in Transylvania County, in the southern reaches of western North Carolina. This episode, it is not going to be geared toward an overall discussion of the city's history. That is for another episode. This episode, it is instead going to be more of an architectural investigation of the downtown core. The Main Street Historic District of Brevard, it is bounded roughly by Gaston Street on the east, England Street on the west, Probart Street on the north, and Jordan Street on the south. The city of Brevard, it is laid out in a basic grid pattern, interspersed by service alleys. The Main Street Historic District, it is centered around the original courthouse square located approximately in the center of town. Lots are basically small and level with the street, with only the courthouse set slightly up on a hill for prominence. Contiguous buildings do line both sides of the streets. Okay, so there is at least one, possibly even two, buildings that I am supposed to show you, but it appears today in 2024 that little alley right there, Times Alley, is closed off. Lots of construction going on there. What does that mean? Well, we'll have to see, but not sure if I can get down there. Not sure if one or more of those freestanding buildings will be visible. This region here, it might be the best vantage point I can get, or maybe not. Regardless, the only freestanding buildings are this, 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 one that stood next to this, no longer standing, and the Transylvania County Courthouse, including its associated buildings and structures. Now, as I said, they are doing lots of construction down there, and I think that building, the one there, might be the one they're referring to. That Downtown Chocolates building, not sure though. Now, on to the building that stood next to this, no longer standing. Yup, according to this map here, the area that's circled, there is supposed to be a building next to this one. Well, there is, but nothing that fits this description. Yes, there are picnic tables, and this Brevard hemp building, that clearly does not fit that description. So, folks, tell me, what happened to the brick building that once reportedly stood here? Development outside of the historic district, it consists primarily of freestanding modern commercial buildings, parking lots, and some clusters of historic and modern residences. The buildings lying within the district, they range from 1874 to the early 1950s. Okay, so this here, it is the nomination form for the Main Street Historic District. This district was listed on the National Register of Historic Places back in 2002, and it is now 2024. Things could have changed in regards to any number of buildings since that date. If and when changes are noted, they will be pointed out. What this episode is not going to be is a mere walking tour of the entire district. You see, there are 45 resources in the district. I just don't have the time to cover them all. Instead, portions of this document will be put to video, namely those that form a cohesive architectural survey. When a given resource is mentioned, then a more in-depth investigation of it will ensue. At the time this episode was compiled, Brevard, And nearby Rossman, about 9 miles away, remain the only incorporated towns in all of Transylvania County. Most of the county's architecture, it is set within a rural context, making the city of Brevard unique within the county for having a defined commercial downtown core. The Main Street Historic District of Brevard, it contains the Second Empire brick Transylvania County Courthouse of 1874, one of the oldest in all of western North Carolina. It is set on an elevated lot within a park-like setting at the northeast corner of the two main crossroads. It is a two-story building with a prominent three-story central tower capped by a mansard roof. Around the building, 2/2 sash windows can be found, holding transoms and capped by segmental arches. Architectural detailing worth noting include the brick coins and a recessed central entry. This entry, it is set back from an arched opening topped by brick vachures and a keystone. The building itself, it is capped by a low-hipped roof. Now, yes, that is probably true, but to see just how low-hipped it might be, I'm afraid that might require a plane. There is this stone retaining wall that does extend around the south and west sides of the lot, probably constructed by the Wright brothers, who were local stonemasons. This courthouse, it was completed in 1874 and was built by local contractor Thomas Davis at a cost of $12,000. And yes, it was the first brick structure in the city. Hey, look! I found an elk made out of metal wire. And then, moving over here, somebody has to ask me this question. Are those flowers here natural to this location, or were they planted here? And if so, planted by whom? Yes, inquiring minds, they want to know. Anyhow, to the rear can be found the jail, a two-story brick addition with the same segmental arched windows as the original section, and a hipped roof. It was built in 1921. Then, in 1983, an additional wing, also of brick and with a hipped roof, was added to the rear of the jail. Also on the lot can be found two other associated buildings. What we have here is the administration building, a one-story brick building with a flat roof. It holds modern doors and windows. This building, it served as the library when first built. The two-story wing at the northeast corner, it was added circa 1960, and a covered walkway does lead from the west side of the one-story section to the main courthouse. Now, this administration building, it has come to occupy the site of the former United Daughters of the Confederacy Library. Also nearby is this, a seating shelter, a one-story shelter structure with open sides below a hipped roof. And what else can be found here? Basically, triple posts on brick piers, a concrete floor, a beaded board ceiling, and benches around the perimeter. Benches, yes, but around the perimeter? Not really. There are, in the historic district, many fine examples of one and two-story brick commercial buildings from the late 19th century through the early 1950s. One of these includes this, the McMinn Building, one of the largest buildings in the district. It is a two-story building with a corner entrance and that faces the courthouse square. Four irregular bays, divided by pilasters, can be found across the front, as well as three along the east elevation. The Romanesque-influenced decorative brickwork, it includes a drip corbelled cornice, pilasters, and raised segmental arches over the 1/1 sash windows on the second story. The two westernmost storefronts, they are said to hold original materials and an original configuration. There is said to exist, however, some addition of paneling and other modern materials at the corner storefront and entrance. The iron pilasters around the storefronts, they are stamped with Mesker Brothers, Front Builders, St. Louis, Missouri, MOPAT, October 87. The porch at the rear, it has been enclosed. Okay, so these pilasters here, they definitely do appear to be original at this storefront here. And it does hold that captioning, that of the Mesker brothers, but what about those over there? Hmm. Before we go on to discuss this building any further, there is a sign you need to see. Yes, Brevard. It was once home to Moms Mabley, who was a black comedian, as well as a social and civil rights activist. Now, back to this building. This building, it is capped by a flat roof with a stepped parapet wall on the east side. On the inside, pressed tin ceilings can be found on the first floor, and upstairs, the building is said to retain its original office configuration. Notable second floor features include a wide staircase with turned balusters, a wainscot and chair rail, transoms above the doors, and bullseye corner blocks. Hardwood floors, they do remain throughout. Part of the so-called McMinn block, this building, the McMinn building, it was constructed in 1899 by Nathan Van Buren McMinn, a prominent Brevard businessman who came to Brevard in 1861. It was the first brick commercial building completed in downtown Brevard, and it does remain a landmark building within the central business area. Some of the businesses in this building have included the Brevard Banking Company, which Nathan McMinn founded in 1898, T.B. Allison's and MacFi's drugstores, both as a corner store, Nichols Drugstore, the Canteen Cafe, a bus station at the rear, the Royal Cafe, and several lawyers and dentist offices on the second floor. Some of the prominent lawyers and judges who had offices on that there second floor include Waitstill Avery Gash, Robert Lenore Gash, D.L. English, possibly this person, and Robert T. Gash. Reportedly, also on the second floor was once the Austin Photo Studio. Moving now to this here, the Lowe Auto Company building, built circa 1928. It is a two-story yellow brick building with a basement. There do exist many decorative features, including herringbone panels set with cast medallions of cars, decorative brick panels under the windows, pressed glass transoms, and a denticulated cornice. The windows here are of the metal frame multi-light awning style. The larger display windows, they wrap from the front around to the east side, and the building, it is capped with a flat roof holding parapet walls. It was originally built as the Lowe Auto Company, which acted as a Ford dealership showroom and garage. The interior of the building, it is said to have originally had a concrete ramp that extended up to the upper floors. Okay, folks, it appears we can get inside this one, so let's see what we can find in here. There we have gifts for the guy who has everything. Wow, An old pinball machine. Diamond Little Double, I guess. And there, I think that's a classic Jeep, and a little gabled display to the right there, and a bench with some books. Over there we have an old train set, Lionel trains. Wow, remember those? Some other stuff here too, like a bottled beer poster. What is that? A taxidermied, I guess, bear way up there? Next to it, a deer's head, maybe an elk? Hmm. What else might we find in here? Wow, we've got steps. Yeah, I think we do need to climb those. First, though, a nice view of some ceiling fans spinning round and round. Wow, we have stairs going down, too. So, this place is like huge. And a detour sign there pointing straight ahead. Okay, let's go down there. We'll go up those other stairs later. Now, I guess you could call this the basement level. Though, an old car dealership. Yeah, I can see this layout once having been that. It's all wide and open. Today, though, it appears to act as a nice kind of shop, an antique shop, an assorted heap of stuff. All kinds of stuff like furniture from the 1950s, even earlier, couches, tables, chairs, all kinds of things you might want in your house. And a nice concrete floor here, keeping this place nice and cool. Over here we have more furniture and other stuff to be found. Okay, now moving over here to this bench, we have an old 1950s era photo of Pearlman's, a store once here in Brevard. Okay, folks, now I am upstairs, having walked up the stairs you saw a bit earlier. I guess you could call this the second story. More classic furniture can be found here too, like that nice desk. I bet it is made of wood, pure wood, not particle board. And over here we have a hutch with lots of trinkets. But what do we have here? A fisherman's dream world? It seems like it is. Moving over to this area, this wall, more furniture, a nice fireplace. You know, I wonder how much this stuff costs. Maybe later we'll get a peek at a price or two. Wow, what is that? An elk's head staring at me. I think that's an elk. Anyway, I was told there is this hidden stair leading to a secret chamber. Now, that is something I have got to check out. Yep, fourth floor. Maybe that's it. Up that away? Oh, but wait, what is down there? I think that's just an exit. Wow, an employee lounge. I wonder what that might look like. But I doubt I can go in there. Anyway, over here, we have a nice decorative bench, roped off, like no seating here. Wow, it's a black forest bear bench. What does that say? Am I reading that right? $6,500? That's almost half the cost of a cheaper car. But didn't they sell those in here at one time? Okay, so I guess this really can be considered a fisherman's paradise after all. I bet those fishing poles there are like collector's items. Anyhow, let's move on to that secret chamber. The New Yorker. That's kind of out of place. And so is this here, a picture of the Snake River. That's not anywhere near North Carolina. It's cool, though. I think that's like a pic of the Tetons. Ooh, we've got a bit of nudity in here. All right, so let's move on up to that secret chamber, that fourth floor, I guess. Going up here, apparently, we have these metal stairs and a picture gallery on the way up. Hampton relics. Hmm. Wow, it's a little ducky there. And peacock feathers, I think. Hey, look, we have a place to sleep up here. I wonder how much that bed costs. What is that, a wool blanket? Think it might be. But yes, over there we do have a price tag. What does it say? $1,100? Okay, that's cheaper than that bear bench downstairs. Now, around here, old photos can be found, and I wonder if those are from here in North Carolina. You know, that does kind of sort of look like a Smoky Mountain kind of cabin. Not sure though. But I have to say, nice coloring up here and lots more antiques to be found. All kinds of neatly designed room setups here. Now, yes, I could spend lots of time here showing you this or that, maybe even more than an hour, but that is not the kind of time I have, so yes, we do need to get back outside. So, this building that I was just in, it later served as a hosiery mill during World War II, the Wheeler Hosiery Company, and then it operated as Perlman's Furniture, of which this 1950 photo is of its grand opening. In 1968, the building became Rice Furniture, which reportedly operated at this location for 50 years. Now, here we have reportedly an interior shot showing what Rice Furniture once looked like. Moving now to this here, the Brevard Banking Company building, built circa 1924, the only neoclassical revival building in the entire district. It is a two-story Flemish bond brick building with a monumental entry portico detailed in limestone. The portico details, they include half columns, a full entablature, and an arched window above the recessed front door. And the flat roof, it holds a pedimented parapet on the front side. The arched window openings with their scroll ornamentation do remain intact. However, all the original windows reportedly have been replaced with fixed panes. The front windows, those that flank the central door, they hold decorative limestone garlands above. And at the rear end, one can find a more plain two-story brick section, which is apparently original. However, there is also this more modern, circa 1970s, stucco addition. At the east end, one can find a drive-through area covered by a gabled roof. Overall, this building, it was designed by prominent Hendersonville-based architect Earl Stillwell and built by Brevard contractor R.P. Kilpatrick. Now, Brevard Banking, it failed in 1929, and the building, it was later occupied by the Transylvania Trust Company. Apparently, or reportedly, today, it still acts as a bank. Really? It still acts as a bank. Where is the ATM? And the drive-through stuff? Is that really still true? Let's see if we can find out. Can we get a peek inside? Now, does that look like a bank to you? If that is still a bank, it certainly has an unusual layout for a bank. Tell me, do interiors of banks generally look like that? I wonder where the teller stands are, and do they like just sit at tables and speak to you in person here? Yes, that over there is where the safe is, but what has this place really become? Has it been rehabilitated, turned into something else? Now, this door appears to be locked. Welcome to the Trust Center. Okay, please enter the side doors. I guess that's what we need to do. So, I do see cars parked over here, but can we get in those side doors? Cool, because it appears we can. Cool view, but I don't really want to hang out in here. I don't see any security folk, but just tell me quickly, is this still a bank? Bank or not, I need some coffee. And guess what? I found this little coffee shop here in Brevard, and I think it's time for a nice cup of brew. Maybe a nice espresso, a latte, maybe a cappuccino, I don't know. Yes, this place is called the Cup and Saucer. Now, here's the thing. I thought I had footage of me drinking a latte. Maybe I thought I pressed record and did not, or it got lost. I don't know, but buildings built from the late 1890s to circa 1910 here in Brevard were constructed of brick, most with defined cornices and roof lines. This building here, it once operated as the plumber's department store during the mid 1900s. Reportedly, they once sold wonderful toys during the Christmas season. Furthermore, at one time, there was this auditorium theater located upstairs, but it was toward the back, and it was used, reportedly, for sporting events as well as for entertainment. Overall, such buildings are good examples of turn of the century commercial building design, characterized by the use of decorative and patterned brickwork, shaped parapets, and very restrained classical or medieval inspired ornament. The largest buildings in the district, including this one right here, the McMinn Building, were built in that time period. Many of these early buildings have been substantially altered in the late 20th century. In Brevard, the 1910s to 20s saw a movement towards more simplicity, with the commercial style being the culmination of that trend. Now, the main feature of that style is the use of plain brick wall surfaces. In buildings from the 1930s, they often employed the use of textured brick and were primarily one-story buildings with one or two storefronts. The commercial style was still popular during that period with plain cornices and window frames. What we have here, however, is the co-ed theater, a notable exception to those building trends of the 1930s. Here, they used the Art Moderne style. That style was typically used for buildings like this, movie theaters. In fact, what this thing is a two-story Art Moderne stucco building with a flat roof. It holds a stepped facade, essentially recessed entry bay on the first floor, and a row of apparently original casement windows on the second floor. Look, one of the windows up there is missing. This here, the front door, it holds a double leaf. Okay, so yes, that door there does hold a double leaf. That's true, but I think it should have said the two front doors hold a double leaf. Well, it should say the two pairs of doors. Hmm. I wonder if the document talks about the ticket booth, because that right there, yeah, That's what that is. Regardless, to the east, one can find a new brick wall that denotes the location of where this, the Clemson Theater, was torn down. That's what's there these days. A hardware store is said to once have been at this location, but had to be torn down to make way for this. This building was originally owned and built by the Clement family, who also at the time owned the adjacent Clemson Theater. In 1942, three persons from Morganton, Brian Shiflett, Vernon Davis, and C.G. Carter, bought the co-ed theater. That might be true. Today, however, in 2024, we can find a hardware store right next door, Ace Hardware. But when the Clemson Theater was still standing, there were two active theaters here in downtown Brevard through 1956, the year when the Clemson shut its doors. It was torn down in the early 1990s, and the ticket booth, it was moved to, well, the co-ed theater, now called the Falls Theater. Now called the Falls Theater, but was once the co-ed theater. That's interesting because that sign right there, yeah, that says the co-ed cinema. And that's not all. You see, right up there, it says the same thing. The co-ed cinema in very big letters. So, what is going on here? Apparently, this was the co-ed theater, then it became the Falls Theater, and finally, I guess, it went back to the co-ed theater, well, cinema. You've been renamed. Also in the 1940s, several older buildings in the district were altered with materials available at that time. One of these altered buildings is this, the Blue Gator Tea Room Building, a one-story brick building. It was constructed as one building with the current facade added circa the 1940s. There are three storefronts with a central door and flanking large single-pane windows. This, here, it is an older photo of it. Yes, a flat roof can be found here with parapet walls and a stuccoed east wall. There are several additions at the rear. In the easternmost section of the building, it is said to retain its original storefront configuration. The original transom, however, has been covered with brick. In the 1920s, Ward's newsstand, the Blue Gator Tea Room, and the plumbing shop were occupants of this building. Another altered building is this, the City Market Building, with its awning-style windows. It is a two-story brick building which recently had been renovated back to its 1940s appearance. Recently, as of the early 2000s, that is. It holds a flat roof with parapet walls. However, this building was built circa 1905, and it has had several facade changes, including one prominent one in the late 1940s. These changes included rebuilding the second floor to raise the parapet to what would come to be its current level, making it even with the buildings on both sides. Also added at that time were new windows, a new brick facing, and a new storefront. Much of the interior was also remodeled in the 1940s to include woodworking trim from the Lake Toxaway Inn, destroyed in the 1916 flood. Now, this building, it is part of the so-called Picklesheimer block, and it is one of the oldest buildings on Main Street. One of its earliest uses was as the city market. In the early 1940s, it was Cato Clothing, and later, in the late 1940s and 50s, it became part of Patterson's department store. A modern facade was applied over this and the adjacent building in the 1970s. However, that has been removed. Okay, folks. Within the immediate vicinity of the Picklesheimer block, we have this here, O.P. Taylor's, the coolest toy store on the planet. What you see in this window is what you get, folks. Toys, toys, and more toys, many of them classic and long forgotten, and many you have never heard of. Like a wheel made of little Connects pegs. It's like a big toy Ferris wheel on display. Cool, huh? Yeah, I bet. So, what do you say we take a walk inside? So, inside, near the door, we walk right in to lots of Playmobil stuff. And there's even a cardboard cutout of a cop next to it. Little stuffed white squirrels. That's not surprising, because we are in Brevard after all, reportedly, the home of the white squirrel. Moving over here, more stuffed animals. All kinds here. Rabbits, everything. Yes, there is this nice wooden floor. It's a bit creaky too, though you can't hear that. Darts, tennis rackets, tiki toss. What kind of game is that? Not sure, but look, they've even got little green balls up there. Moving now to this aisle. Yeah, it is a bit cramped in here, but look at all those Lego cars. All kinds of Lego stuff here. Even Lego Minecraft. Aisles and aisles of Lego stuff, apparently. But whatever happened to those large Lego sets, the ones where you can build stuff from scratch? Moving over here, we have Hot Wings, Matchbox, and other toy car stuff. Even airplane stuff going on over here. Yep, lots of car stuff up there also. What do you say we take a walk down this aisle over to, what is that? A train set? A toy road set? Sorry, girlie, but I do need to see this. Yup, a toy racetrack. And some similar stuff going on over here, too. Okay, so up these stairs we go. What do we have here? Toys for aliens. Little green men, stuff like that. Wow, look at those lava lamps up there. What do we have over here? Little figurines, unicorns, animals, people of certain fantastical periods, I guess, and horseshoes. Down there we have the world's finest basketball hoops. And look at all the Tony's stuff. Nice displays we've got going on over here, I must admit. And we have a staircase. Yes, we do need to walk up there. Wow, there's a globber flow foldable bike kind of thing, a color burst swing, a splash pad for people who want to get wet. And looking down the balcony there, all kinds of board games. They've even got Monopoly sets. What is this? A narwhal or something? A unicorn whale? Not sure. But look at those hula hoops up there. Look at all those stuffed animals there lining this staircase. I sure hope none of them bite. Up here we have, wow, an inflatable noodle. Oh man, I've got to snap a photo of that. An inflatable noodle? I mean, who comes up with this kind of stuff? Koosh toys. Wow, Here we have Picasso tracks and a Brio labyrinth. Remember those? Magnetic construction toys, cool. Look, a flat G motor there to the left. Architectural engineering toys like how to design a Ferris wheel, roller coaster engineering. Yes, and there's all that Connect stuff. But what do we have here? Gravitrax. What is that? Some kind of urban planning toy? What might we find here in this chamber? It looks like it's stuff for the little ones. Fisher Price toys. Gund Kid. Gund? What is that? I've never heard of that. But what do we have here? Measuring kits, shaving kits, how to grow a flower kits, and walking through here we have another track. Then moving over here we have plushy pets. And I think I see dinosaur stuff over there on that wall too. Wow, $11.99 for this plushie toy. This expansion pack over here, it is $29.99. Cool. But let's now walk down this aisle. Now, this stuff would be cool for those folk among us who do Toy Store reviews, like this guy. Moving down this aisle, lots of animal toys here on display. Even UPS trucks, little bicycle toys. And what do we have around the corner here? Okay, I guess this could be called the stationery or maybe art room, signs, markers, stuff like that. I don't know, but I hate to say it. I could go on in here as well, but that's about all the time I have to explore this place. Look, over here, I found this butterfly seat. Okay, so new buildings from the 1940s, they were one or two-story structures, often built of concrete block with brick facades. The use of glass block, a relatively new material at that time period, was used in window openings, such as what you see here on this building, a two-story commercial brick and stucco building with an added shallow gable roof. Okay, now I believe this is the building they're talking about. Yes, it does appear to be of brick, at least the facade is, and I believe that there is stucco, and yes, there is a glass block. However, where's the shallow gabled roof? That there looks kind of flat to me. Not sure. Everything else does kind of fit that description. Maybe, though, just maybe, they were referring to another building near it. Doubtful, but not entirely sure. As you can see, though, up on the second floor there are the glass block windows. On the first, there are metal frame multi-light casement windows. And there does exist soldier course brick above the front door, above all the windows, as well as between the first and second floors. This here, the center leaf double door. It is framed by single multi-light casement windows. The two notable 1950s buildings in the district, they are both one-story brick structures. Well, not this, but the one next to it, no longer standing. This here is the 1952 Perlman building. This one-story brick building of 5 bays wide was reportedly built for the Perlman's Furniture Store, here on the far right. Reportedly, even today, most of the metal and brick storefront openings do remain intact. The two westernmost storefronts, they hold recessed storefronts. The others are flush with the sidewalk. In the 3 remaining bays, the transoms appear to be covered with metal panels. The building, overall, it holds a flat roof with a stepped parapet wall in the center. Yes, that does appear to still hold true. 1950s photographs, like this one, appear to show the Dixie Home Supermarket in the center storefront. Okay, so 5 bays wide? Yes, it's definitely a long building. And it does look like it's all one building. Still, some of what the document says does not appear to fully add up. Flush with the sidewalk? Well, here's the sidewalk. I would kind of call this recessed, I guess. Yes, the storefronts on their own are not recessed, but the thing does curve inward. You could argue, I guess, that it is flush with the sidewalk if you want to count this inward portion a sidewalk. This over here, though, is the actual sidewalk. Then there are the transoms, covered with metal panels. I mean, I don't know. This here is a metal panel, but that also exists there. So I am not sure if that is what they mean. The transoms themselves appear to be glass. Now, there is a possibility that this has been completely remodeled. Maybe there were at one time transoms like up there. Overall, though, today this does have a kind of Spanish appearance. I guess maybe because of the Mexican restaurant, not sure. Well, that does just about sum up the contents provided by the document in regards to the architectural context. However, the city of Brevard does hold at least one more building that is worthy of being elaborated upon. There could certainly be a few others to pick from, sure, but this, right here, while altered, is the only remaining example of the grand hotels which were built in downtown Brevard at the turn of the century. Originally built in 1905, this here is a two-story brick structure originally built in the Queen Anne mode. It was designed to hold retail on the first floor and rooms on the second. The building, it turns back into the block from South Broad Street and forms an L shape behind the adjacent buildings that face East Main Street. On this here, the Main Street side, there are two storefront bays on the first floor. This one here is modern, and the other, it retains its original configuration and detailing. There are 5 bays on the second floor that hold single 1/1 arched windows and a double leaf in the center. The original entrance to the hotel, framed by the original rough-cut ashlar block, it faces Broad Street. The rear walls, they appear to have been stuccoed. Reportedly, originally, this building, it had a third story set within a mansard roof line. That was removed circa 1960 when, apparently, town officials, they considered it to be a fire hazard. After that, it came to hold this present flat roof. Well, as you can see, not anymore, but we'll get into that shortly. Also removed at about the same time was the one-story portico with its balustrade on the west side, pictured here, as well as the stone arches at the corner entry facing onto the courthouse square, also pictured here. Much of the original interior detailing does remain, including the tin ceilings on the first floor. Yes, this is a much more modern photo of the room pictured here. The Athelwald Hotel, as this building was originally known, was built by John William McMinn, the son of Nathan McMinn, the developer of The McMinn block that lies diagonally across the street from this hotel, which was named for Ethel, John McMinn's wife. McMinn continued to run the hotel until his death in 1918. The first floor of the building, it has come to house many retail and commercial businesses, including Parsons and later Brevard Jewelers, Varner's Drugstore, the People's Bank, the Walter Meyer Grill, and an insurance company. On the upper two floors, the hotel could house 100 guests in 40 rooms. By the way, this here, it is an ancient interior shot of Varner's Drugstore. Now, after McMinn died, Thomas W. Whitmire bought the building and renamed the hotel the Walter Meyer for his son Walter. Thomas Whitmire, he was born in Brevard, and in 1890 he married Mattie Cooper. He served 16 years as either mayor or chairman of the Board of Aldermen. He was an active local businessman with ventures in retail, real estate, and insurance. Strangely, though, the former Athelwald Hotel, it was the scene of a practical joke. Jack Hudson's grandfather, while attending a meeting at the hotel, prearranged with the waiter to insult him. Hudson's grandfather then pulled out a gun and shot the waiter, who was prepared with ketchup, and staged a dramatic fall to the floor. The friends for whom the joke was staged were reportedly shocked. Oh my, this here, it is the Walter Meyer lobby. As said earlier, the building appears to once again hold its mansard roof. What about that balcony, though? Is that original? But yes, over a span of nearly 2 decades, a long and painstaking renovation had taken place. Now, this document, it could not have mentioned anything of such a renovation because it dates to 2002, the year when the Main Street Historic District was placed on the National Register of Historic Places. Regardless, thanks to this man, Tim Hall, the Ethelwald Hotel has been restored to its original glory. You can read all about the building's impressive transformation right here in this article from Go Upstate, a website with ties to the Spartanburg Herald Journal. Now, it appears all the time I have to cover this historic district has been exhausted. Therefore, you know the drill. Yes, we do have to move on.